Welcome, class. Today you do not get Mr. Stoll, you get virtual Mr. Stoll, and you better behave for Miss Maloney or I'll hear about it. Anyways, today's task is to start probably looking for the biggest part of your book, the trials, allies, and enemies. Alright, these are going to probably recur throughout several days worth of your book. This is day 4. Make sure that you write today's date on your little reading log. But you'll notice a lot of these things throughout your book. Usually your character goes through many different tests or trials throughout the story. Often they fail some of the early tests until they kind of get the hang of this new world or this new place that they're in. And eventually they start succeeding. Often throughout stories, their tests usually come in threes, but not always. Especially for some of these longer novels, they will have multiple tests. Example of tests or trials from the Goonies, let's see here. There would be the Tumbling Stones, the Wishing Well, where they had to decide whether they wanted to leave or continue with their adventure. And of course the Organ of Bones, where they had to play the right tones or die. So there were several tests throughout the Goonies. Generally they come in pairs of groups of 3, and often there is some kind of failure involved. For example, when the Goonies hit like a wrong note on the Organ of Bones and almost died before they got it right. Allies. Of course, your protagonist is going to need some help from his friends or her friends. Those are the allies. Those are the people whose job it is to kind of help them along their way. They should be pretty easy to spot. One example of an ally, which you might want to take special notice of, is kind of like a god/goddess figure. That is usually a character of an opposite sex of the protagonist, not always. But it's usually someone that they either greatly admire or have a great love interest or kind of a like. A good example of this would be in, well, I hate to be a bit of a spoiler here, in the Hunger Games series, Katniss. There's actually 2 fellas that she's kind of interested in, Gale and Peeta. So those would be kind of considered the god/goddess figures to them. There's almost a little bit of a worship going on there. That's why they call it the god/goddess. These characters are especially helpful as an ally. Probably the biggest ally that they have. The other thing to look out for during these tests and trials are going to be temptations. There is usually some kind of character that tempts them from their way. So it's kind of in combination with the god/goddess. So in Hunger Games, for example, you have a tempter and you have a god. Peeta or Gale, who is who? So, those are things to look out for during the trials. Enemies, those are pretty easy to spot as well. You know them right off the bat. For your protagonist, they're usually called the antagonist. So, today's goal after you read is to find a quote for either a trial, ally, or enemy that your protagonist has encountered. Also, god or goddess or temptation, fair game as well. So, obviously, God and goddess should fall under allies, and temptation should fall under trials. So, if you're in a group of 3, split up. One takes trials, one takes allies, one takes enemies. If you're in a group of 4, one of those things gets duplicated. And post your quote on Edmodo tonight for homework. Okay? Happy reading, and behave yourselves.